Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, June the 28th, 2020. It is currently 3:01 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church. I say that all the time. Basically, if I'm live on the air, I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church. There are special occasions that I may come to you live from my study at my home, but typically I get in the car, I drive out here to the church, I come back here to the back of the sanctuary, sit down at this table, hook up my laptop, hook up my microphone, open up the Spreaker Studio software, hit the big red Go Live button, and then I'm ready to talk to people from around the world. So if you are listening to me live, thank you so very much for tuning in on this Sunday afternoon. If you're not listening to me live, whenever, wherever, however you may be listening, I do appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And, well, I'm here today. Wow. I was, when church concluded this afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and I got in my car to drive home, I turned on Christian radio and they were just talking about so many different things that are happening in our world right now. And by the time I got home, I was like, well, okay, I need to turn back around and go back and talk, but where do I even begin? What should I talk about? Because I just feel like there's so many things that you don't know where to start, you don't know where to stop, you don't know what to say. It's just so much is happening right now. How should we respond? When should we respond? What should we say? It's just insane to be alive right now. And I know in one way, every generation, like as you get older, I think every generation, as they get older, they stop and they look at the world and they're like, wow, things are crazy. Things are changing. I know that that's true of every generation, but maybe I'm just, so I always want to be very balanced in what I say. But it does really feel that right now things are falling apart and things are spiraling out of control. And it's like we've driven the car off the cliff and we're just in a free fall. And all that we're waiting for right now is the big boom when we hit the ground. That's all we're waiting for. It's like we've already left the road. We went through the guardrail. We went over the side of the cliff and we're just in the car. And all we're doing is just waiting. We're just waiting for that inevitable crash when we finally reach the bottom. And that's what it feels like right now. We're just falling and just waiting. And you don't want to say that. Like on one hand, I don't want to say that because it sounds like hyperbole. It sounds like, well, that's just exaggerating. But I really feel that way. And I think based off some emails that I have received recently from a number of individuals, they've all indicated either very explicitly or you can kind of read between the lines that there's a sense of just, man, what is wrong? I'm frustrated. I'm depressed. I don't even I think there's a sense of like a dark cloud hanging over all of us. And how do I address it? I don't know. And I guess I'm saying all of this because I've got some pretty depressing news right here to my right, on my iPad. And, but it's even though it's depressing, even though it's disturbing, it's something that we have to at least consider. Now, what I'm going to try to do is report this, but I'm going to try to do my best to keep us in check, that we don't read more into it. We don't make more out of it than it is. We don't want to make less of it. We want a very balanced and thoughtful. I want us to look at this from a very thoughtful, balanced perspective. But it's something that we need to know. Obviously, I have stated it over and over and over again. We live in a post-Christian culture. That there's no question about that. Post-Christian culture. A large portion of the church has become so politically hijacked that it's pathetic and sad. We have a spiritual deadness that I think has crept over the church, that it's really disturbing. And the culture has not only we've entered into a post-Christian culture, we are now living in a post-truth culture and a post-reality culture. Truth is what you want it to be. Reality is what you want it to be. And it's very difficult to know how to address a culture where truth really, in their minds, truth is what you want it to be and reality is what you want it to be. How do you address them in regards to truth and absolutes? It's becoming more and more difficult. But since we've already driven the car off the cliff, since we're in the middle of a free fall right now, it's probably very important that we realize kind of where the society is. And you may want to pay close attention to this. Here we go. All right. Here is the headline. 6 out of 10 Americans. 6 out of 10 Americans. I want you to hear that again. 6 out of 10 Americans disagree with the statement that human life is sacred. 6 out of 10 Americans disagree with the statement that human life is sacred. There was a time that the majority of people, if you talked about is human life sacred, they would say, yes, there is some sanctity. There's a sacredness to human life. There's some value. There's an inherent sacredness, sanctity, value in it. And now 6 out of 10 Americans disagree with the statement that human life is sacred. Now, this is according to a new survey. Barna Group surveyed people and asked about feelings on human life. Sacred was defined, are you ready, as having unconditional, intrinsic worth. That is the definition of sacred that was used in the survey. So let me state it this way. 6 out of 10 Americans disagree that human life has unconditional, intrinsic worth. 6 out of 10 Americans disagree that human life, or 6 out of 10 Americans disagree that human life is sacred. So in other words, they disagree with the idea that human life has unconditional, intrinsic worth. 6 out of 10 disagree that human life has unconditional, intrinsic worth. I'm going to keep repeating that over and over. 6 out of 10 Americans disagree with the idea that human life has unconditional, intrinsic worth. Well, if it doesn't have unconditional, intrinsic worth, then what is human life worth at all? Does it even have any worth? Now, I don't know the context in which the question was asked, because here's something that I think would possibly, because I'm going to try to play devil's advocate here. If you ask this question in the context of abortion, right? Hey, that baby, does it have any unconditional, intrinsic worth? They're going to say it's not a baby. It doesn't have any, there's no sacredness to it. It doesn't. Now, if you're speaking of the baby in the womb, yes, the culture has pretty much thrown that away. Don't believe it has any intrinsic worth. It doesn't. No, they don't believe there's any sacredness there. However, life outside the womb, there is still a lot. I mean, it would be bizarre for these people to say, hey, 6 out of 10 Americans saying, hey, human life does not have any unconditional, intrinsic worth. It doesn't have that. It's not true. But then turn around and yell and complain about racism or social injustice or all the things happening in the world, because why would you care? Because human life doesn't have any unconditional, intrinsic worth. So I think we live in a culture right now where even how they even process things, like there's no logic, there's no consistency. And so they will apply a standard to human life that they then turn around and deny. In other words, they will make an argument about racism or injustice or how women are being treated. And they're making that argument, and the basis of that argument would require that human life has some kind of unconditional, intrinsic worth. So they, on one hand, they fight for certain groups of people as if they have value, as if they have worth, and then they turn around and deny the very foundational truth that would support them out there marching and protesting and calling for justice and fairness and equality. So it's a really weird world that we live in right now. Like on one hand, you think, oh, they would have to believe life is sacred. They're out there fighting for someone's rights and fairness and equality. But then at the same time, 6 out of 10 Americans are like, no. I disagree. I disagree with the statement that human life is sacred. And sacred is being defined as having unconditional intrinsic worth. Now listen, of the people surveyed, only 39% said they agreed with the claim that human life is sacred. Only 39% agreed that human life is sacred. So less than 50% of the people surveyed believe life is sacred. Now, it's a survey. Surveys just do what they can to try to get, they sample a small number, and then you can take that and maybe it gives insight. Maybe it's not an accurate understanding of how people generally think. But I can tell you this, it's something that we need to pay close attention to. Because if we continue to move as a society where there is basically, it becomes a majority opinion that human life has no intrinsic value, has no intrinsic worth, is not sacred, there is no sanctity to human life, the ramifications of that moving forward should disturb and worry everyone. When you look at the world right now, do you see how people treat one another as they believe other people have some unconditional intrinsic worth? Or do they see people simply as tools to use for their own means, their own pleasure, their own desires, their own advancement? Are they willing to push down people, hurt people, take from people, kill people, deceive people? And I think we are getting there. And let's listen. I mean, I don't know how else you can say this. When the dominant, I'm going to argue, philosophical position, some will argue it's a scientific position, but I think there's a philosophical element to it that cannot be denied. When your dominant educational position is that human beings are simply evolved animals, then isn't it fair to say that what's going to flow from that is a devaluation of that human life? That it doesn't have any intrinsic, unconditional worth? There's no sacredness to it. There's no sanctity to it. We're just evolved animals. What gives life value? Now, I want you to understand, if this becomes the way people think, well, then all the protest and arguing about racism and sexism and making sure LGBTQ people are treated with dignity and respect and equality, at some point, all of that it's arguing and trying to fight for things with no foundation to support your arguing and fighting for those very things. It's a very weird, like almost schizophrenic society that we live in right now. On one hand, there's all this social justice and let's do what's right. On the other hand, 6 out of 10 Americans disagree with the statement that human life is sacred, and only 39% agree with the claim that human life is sacred, and sacred is being defined as having unconditional intrinsic worth. A substantially larger share of the population combined to offer views such as life is what you make it, but it has no absolute value. So 37% say life is what you make it, but it has no absolute value. Life does not attain its full value until we reach our highest point of evolution and expression. 11% say that. Life does not attain its full value until we reach our highest point of evolution and expression. I don't even know what that means. Or other, less popular points of view that concur that life has no infinite, unconditional value, the report said. So some will, you've got all these different kind of life is what you make it, but it has no absolute value. Others go on to just say life has no infinite, unconditional value at all. Of those who said they were evangelical and born-again Christians, 60% agreed with the statement. So 60% of evangelical born-again Christians say that life is sacred. Only 60%. I don't know how you could be a born-again evangelical Christian and not, that should be 100%. Of those who identified as Pentecostal, that number was 46%. And this is what's shocking, 43% of Roman Catholics. So Roman Catholics had the lowest percentage of people saying that they agree that human life is sacred. That is kind of shocking. Most, 69%, said that people are basically good. Now, please, that's just bizarre. 69% said that people are basically good. Well, how can you be basically good if your life doesn't even have any intrinsic value or worth? How do you even define good? What do you mean by good? People are basically good, but the world is on fire and burning out of control. But everyone's good. So just get on the television and just say, hey, cut it out, be good. Yeah, cut it out, be good hasn't worked. So that's an interesting number. Most 69% said that people are basically good. More than 30 years ago, the Barna survey showed that 83% of people believed people were basically good. So actually that number is coming down. So we're now to 69%. That's interesting. So now people don't, well, you know what? That would make sense. More people now believe life is not sacred, has no intrinsic worth, and less people now believe people are basically good. I think maybe there's a correlation there. Dr. George Barna, the founder of Barna Group, said the survey's findings are impacted by demonstrations happening across the United States. A movement to defund the police departments might make sense if people are in a movement to defund police departments might make sense if people are innately good, he explained. People with a humanistic worldview argue that crime and violence happen because of poverty, bad parenting, and systemic discrimination, and other external forces. Yet crime statistics, political tensions, tendencies towards anger and hatred, and America's moral deterioration and confusion suggest that we are neither innately good nor that emotional responses to empirical challenges will solve the problems. But that is true. If you do believe people are innately good, that people are, they're basically good, and that all the problems are due to bad parenting, discrimination, poverty, then we don't need police. We just need to give money to people and get them out of poverty and, teach people how to be good parents, and we can fix all the problems. But that's inherently based off the idea that people are good. But how can you believe people are good if you don't believe their life even has any intrinsic worth or value? Why do you even care about any of those things? It's like right now we are in we currently live in a time of logical confusion. Truth is relative, morality is relative, reality is what you make it, and logic has been, I think that's what we're seeing. Critical thinking skills are gone because these if you take all of these statistics and break them down, they're all over the place. The underlying issues are ill-formed character and a broken moral compass, Barna continued. Economic, social, and cultural depravity are outgrowths of our moral character deficiencies, not causes. And other findings the survey showed, 12% believe that people are material substances, biological machines. 12% believe that people are part of the mind of the universe. We are part of the mind of the universe. Other responses said, now this actually showed up on the survey, that humans are an illusion, we do not exist, or we are sleeping gods, or we are part of the soul of the universe. So there was enough people to even show up on the survey where people are saying that, hey, we're just illusions, we actually don't exist, we're sleeping gods, or we're part of the soul of the universe. Well, what you can definitely see in all of that is an absolute moving away from any biblical understanding of humanity, any biblical understanding of anything. Theological understanding is gone, and even the church is having major issues here. So let's establish the foundational truth. God created man and woman in his image. All human beings have an unconditional, intrinsic worth because they create the image of God. They are image bearers. Now, that image is marred by sin, but there is still something in every human being that demonstrates the image of God. It shows forth the image of God. They are moral beings. They have a mind, thinking, all the different aspects that we've talked about so many times about being created in the image of God. It is there. That is the foundational principle. And because we believe people are created in the image of God, then we believe that when you treat people in a cruel, discriminatory way, then that is not right, because you are treating people who you are attacking and hurting the image bearer, someone who bears the image of God. So therefore, we should want equality and justice, and we should want these things. But these things cannot happen apart from people getting back to the idea that there is a God, there is a creator, and we were created in his image. But if we operate from the position that we're all just evolved animals, then, well, all of this happens. But the survey is all over the place. It's a weird time to see this. And I think the church has an opportunity right here, because people are upset about police brutality. They are upset about racism. They are upset about all of these things. And this is the perfect time not to get into some statistical argument about all of these things, but go, yes, I agree with you that people should be treated correctly. Why do you believe people should be treated correctly? What are you basing on? You want equality. You want fairness. You want all of these. You are using terms that is bad and this is good. You're using terms about morality. Racism bad. Racism evil. Okay, well, what makes it bad? What makes it evil? I think that people should be treated equally because equality is good. Okay, now you're using moral terms. Where does the morality come from? Why does it matter? Why do people's lives have any intrinsic worth and value? Force the people to really consider their philosophical position and make them realize, wait a minute, if we're just evolved animals, then why is there any worth? And if there is no transcendent morality, then why should I care if other people are treated equally? You can say that I should, but you can't tell me I have to. But guess what happens if you speak out against some of the protests, or you speak out, or you have a different opinion on some of this stuff? They're going to come after you to silence you, ban you, cancel you, attack you as if you're evil. Like they think they are attacking evil. But how can I be evil if your truth and my truth, can't we both have our own truth? You want your reality that you can be whatever you want to be, but I can't have it's this weird, broken logic. On one hand, they speak like there's absolute morality, while then arguing that there's no absolute morality. On one hand, they argue that people should be treated with respect and dignity, and that they should be treated as being valuable, but then they have no basis for the reason life has any value or worth, or they will even deny that it does. This is a very important thing to understand. And when you're seeing what's happening in society, try to look deeper. Don't look at the surface. Look at the deeper issues at stake here. Human life. Is it sacred? Is there a sanctity to it? And again, the definition used by the survey is that sacred means having unconditional, intrinsic worth. We as Christians, we argue that it does, because all races, all male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter the race, doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter the geography, doesn't matter the background, doesn't matter what good things they've done, doesn't matter what bad things they've done. All of that is irrelevant. All human beings have an intrinsic worth, an intrinsic value. And I like the way it uses the term unconditional intrinsic worth. Unconditional means it has nothing to do with what we do. It has nothing to do on the basis of who the person is or their character. There's just an unconditional intrinsic worth because they're a human being. And we believe that worth comes from the fact that they're created in the image of God. They have an eternal soul. And we want to see them repent and believe in God so that they can have an eternity with God in heaven. All right, I'll stop right there. The entire article, in fact, let me check here. Grab my iPad here. I got to make sure, because as soon as I think I posted something, I'll realize I did not. All of that was in my notes on my iPad. If you go to theologycentral.net, theologycentral.net, you click on the drop-down menu, go to blog. There it is. Only 39% of Americans believe life is sacred, Barna finds. And you can read the whole article. Yep, it's all right there. So theologycentral.net, go to the blog section. You can get the article and you can share it with friends. You could use it as a discussion in your Sunday school class, small group. Talk about it at church. Talk about it with fellow Christians. And realize this is the world we live in now. We live in a world where only 39% now believe life is sacred. What are the future implications of that? All right, very important. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day. I'll be back live on the air probably here shortly. God bless.